I think it helped that I was a little naive to what I was up against with sarcoma. Um, I think I think that helped a little bit in the beginning. But another doctor, the oncologist for that hospital at the time, comes in. He explains that the pathology report is still unclear. They don't know what kind of cancer it is, and he just tells me that I basically have 3 months to live and that they can't treat me. So I'm like feeling stuck. I'm like, okay, I don't even know. I don't know what kind of cancer I have, but I know it's a bad one. I know I have 3 months to live, and where I'm sleeping right now is a place that can't help me anymore. Hello, my name is Julie. I am from Collingswood, New Jersey, and I was diagnosed with stage 4, poorly differentiated, high grade spindle cell synovial sarcoma, and I was diagnosed at the age of 23, and that was back in 2014. A term I would use is empowering, a little bit against, your will in a sense. It's not something that is technically chosen, but the experience itself has um, really allowed me to look internally at who I am as a person rather than who I am just surface level or who I thought I always was. Um, and I would also say that the experience has allowed me to uh, be a lot more vulnerable and understanding as a person. Prior to diagnosis, it was a little interesting because I was in an automobile accident, and that is kind of what triggered things. So I was in a car accident back in October of 2013. So that's 5 months before my diagnosis month. And in that accident, I had really bad trauma to the chest from my seatbelt. Go figure. um, so after the accident, that following day, I went to the hospital, got scans done, X-rays, and everything was clear. There was no issues, nothing broken, everything looked good. So since that accident, I've had a little bit of chest and back pain persist, and it would increasingly get worse and worse through the months. So I started to see a chiropractor. I thought it was something with my back. They were trying multiple different treatments. Nothing was really working. Massages weren't working. And I was kind of just, doing these things. Nothing was helping. And I'm wondering, this back pain's kind of getting worse and worse. And then fast forward to March, the month I was diagnosed. 2 days prior to diagnosis date, I ran the Phillies 5K in Philadelphia, and I'm not a runner. So I always try to make that very clear. So I was, out of breath, but it was really hurting, after the race. And that night I'm getting ready for bed, and, I go and lay down, and I lay on my back, and it feels like a 20-pound weight on my chest. And I'm actually not able to breathe when I'm laying on my back. And then I lean forward, and then I can breathe perfectly fine. So, I'm going back and forth and testing that, and I knew that something was up. So I texted my mom and I let her know, because she's like the go-getter. So I'm like, she's gonna want to probably take me to the hospital. We go to the hospital, and I'm in the emergency room, and they're just running a few tests. And I think I remember the nurse just being a little taken aback. She was like, there's I think, like, she didn't really know how to explain it. She was like, there's a mass in your chest. Now, I don't have a history of cancer at all in my family, and I'm very naive. At the time, I was very naive to really what it entails. So when they told me I had a mass, I'm like, okay, just like give me medicine and it'll go away. Not knowing that medicine was going to have to be chemotherapy because of cancer. So it was a long process of diagnosis, and they admit me, and then they run more tests, and let's fast forward the process of 2 weeks of testing and biopsies, and then another biopsy because they didn't get enough and they couldn't determine what it was. And the hospital that I was at the time is just like a general hospital. It's not one that would be treating sarcoma. And, I'm waiting for the biopsy results, and a doctor comes in my room that I have never seen before. And he just starts throwing out the C word. And, at this point, I know that I have a mass. Even though I'm doing biopsies, cancer was never in consideration in my mind. Like, it never crossed my mind again, because it's not something that I was familiar with. So, he shares that it's either thymoma, teratoma, lymphoma, or sarcoma. And he was like, we're not sure what cancer it is. He said the C word. I start going like, it's truly like it is in the movies where you draw the blank, everything goes numb, and I'm not really listening to anything else he says after that. And my mom asks him to leave the room because obvious reasons. And then I just break down and I'm like, this literally can't be my life. This isn't something that would happen to me. And I think we as, people that are diagnosed with cancer think that, you think it's never going to happen to you, and then it happens to you. And it was an insane feeling, and I was just hysterically crying for like a minute. And then, I have both of my parents on each side of me, and I just like wipe off the tears, and it's kind of like, okay, game time. Like, we gotta do something now. And I think it helped that I was a little naive to what I was up against with sarcoma. Um, I think that helped a little bit in the beginning. But another doctor, the oncologist for that hospital at the time, comes in. He explains that the pathology report is still unclear. They don't know what kind of cancer it is, and he just tells me that I basically have 3 months to live and that they can't treat me. So I'm like feeling stuck. I'm like, okay, I don't even know. I don't know what kind of cancer I have, but I know it's a bad one. I know I have 3 months to live, and where I'm sleeping right now is a place that can't help me anymore. We had a few friends refer us to Penn. They mentioned, they have a good program. They have a good cancer program, Amberson Cancer Center. And so my mom physically drives the pathology report to Penn to have them review it, which they do. And still mostly inconclusive. I mean, I met with many doctors. I met with the sarcoma board, and they said that they were like 90-ish, 95% sure it was synovial sarcoma, but it was still so hard to, it was like cells they'd never seen before that grew in a way that they'd never seen grow before. And I'm like, of course. So, they get to work, and we create a treatment plan that would work for me. And I get started, right away. And I met with a surgeon first, and at this point, like when I'm in the hospital in between this time of, an inconclusive pathology report to starting treatment, I'm on Google every single night, Googling every term. I Googled all 4 cancers. I still have the Google document saved. Like, I'm just trying to figure out like what I need to do, what I'm up against, which one is the worst one, I'm like, and I was like, I think I should be good as long as I don't have sarcoma, was what I came to conclude. And it turns out it was the one that I didn't want. But, it's like, here I am, a healthy 23-year-old, and then within 24 hours, I'm picking out which cancer I want or don't want. Um, and it's insane to think about. But after much research, I met with a surgeon at Sarcoma who was ultimately my surgeon for my major surgery. But my tumor at the time was too large to operate on. So from the scans, it was a 20 centimeter wide tumor. They said it was about the size of a watermelon, compressed against my left lung. And he said that it's inoperable. And, if you have sarcoma, that most likely you need surgery. So it was scary to hear that I had something that was not able to be operated on. But that's when they knew, okay, we got to go with chemotherapy. We got to shrink this down and we got to get it out of you, and we got to get it out of you quick. I started second week of April, and it was very extensive chemotherapy. It was probably like 8 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. And then I went back on Friday for the Neulasta shot at the time. I believe they do have a patch now, which makes it a little bit more convenient for patients. But at the time, it was the shot. And then I would have 2 weeks off, and that was one round. And I did 6 rounds total. And chemo was the worst thing I have ever done in my life. It was very brutal on my body, but I do like to think that it was so brutal because it was working. That's kind of what I planted in my head. That's what helped me. But it was very hard. There was one point in July, I think it was May, June, July, probably like around my third halfway point, where I had to get 2 platelet transfusions and 2 blood transfusions in one day. And it just felt like my body wasn't my own. I was like, I just have other people's blood. I'm just a skinny pig, just getting like, it was just other people's blood and drugs in my system. And it just deteriorates your self, your perception of yourself, your identity, everything. And I think that's what's like so extremely hard going through it, while also like the treatment is one thing, right? It's physically very hard on the body. I wasn't able to eat food. I wasn't able to swallow medication. Um, I have like a list of pages of like medical, schedules of when I'm supposed to take this, every 4 hours, every 2 hours, every 6 hours. And it's more than a full-time job. There was one point towards the middle, it started to get a lot harder in the middle, and towards the end, I remember the halfway point, they did a rescan and they saw that the tumor was shrinking. It was good news. And the aggressiveness of the growth was going down. So the chemo was working, and that was good to hear. But that was also the first time that I heard that I was stage 4. I was choosing to like just bury myself in the hospital where I felt like I belonged. And I could tell that my family started to notice that I was just getting weaker and weaker. And I was getting more sick and more sick. And there was one night where I could not take any medication at all. I couldn't swallow. I was sitting on the toilet while leaning over a trash can, like, and I remember like feeling like, is this seriously my life? And then, I'm laying in bed and my mom's trying to feed me the medication and I can't even open my mouth. And I remember looking over at her and I tell her, and I'm like, Mom, I don't I don't want to live anymore. But I literally told that to her. And I didn't it felt good to say. And in a way it was meant not in like I never had like, suicidal ideation. It was more of just like I couldn't take the pain anymore. It was overwhelming. It was the physical pain, the emotional pain, like I didn't have friends, felt like I was losing my family. I was a burden. I was just burdening people's lives with this. And it was just becoming too hard. And so I said it, and then after I said it, it just like kind of felt good to say out loud. We waited about a month until surgery just so they can see like the hair growth starting to grow, the peach fuzz. Once the peach fuzz comes in, that kind of shows that the chemo is kind of like rid itself from the body. And they wanted me to like pack on a little bit more weight. I lost a lot of weight because I wasn't really able to eat when I was on like doing chemo. So I tried to stuff my face for a month or so, and then surgery was October 7th of 2024. And that was it was the shortest day for me, and probably I would say the longest for my family. The surgery was 8 hours. And I mean, very extensive. It went from my neck up here. I mean, it's hard to see, but it started here and then all the way down under my left breast to like this, like fully kind of like where I guess how like people would get implants. So it's like I measured it's about 14 inches long and it's just like a hook. And, they had to open up there and crack my sternum open to reach my lung. And the surgeon did, provide feedback after the surgery and he said everything went well. But when he opened up, it was bigger than he had hoped. Like he wasn't anticipating it to be that large. So the biopsy showed that it shrunk to around 7 centimeters, but he said it was probably about a cantaloupe, which is a little bit bigger than he was anticipating. So they did have to remove a decent amount of the left lung in order to get clear margins, which he did get. He said that the cancer, like the tumor, like obliterated the subclavian vein and the phrenic nerve, and then it also spread to my ribs 1 and 2, and so those had to get removed, which is why it looks like I swallowed a golf ball. I was very frustrated with myself and my body for not healing quicker. I feel like I wasn't patient with my healing. I was trying to rush it because I think like I just wanted so badly to get to the next phase of life. Like I just wanted to be done it. And I knew like, all right, chemo's checked off, surgery's checked off. Like let's move on to the next thing. But it was very hard healing from surgery. Like I had to learn how to walk again. I didn't like it was very hard to breathe. Like I was missing a lot of my lung, and also my left diaphragm is paralyzed. So like I have part of my left lung, but it doesn't function because the diaphragm is not like pumping oxygen there. So like I'm not breathing through that lung. And that was all very hard. So I had, PT coming to visit me, in the hospital, out of the hospital, trying to get me to walk. And again, it felt even more like a burden with surgery. It got better after, each day, of course, got better like it usually does. And, I tried to like continue to live and just do the things that kind of make me happy, and then just kind of focus on like the next goal, which was radiation, um which I received at Penn as well, and that was proton radiation, and I started that in December 1st of 2014, and that lasted about 2 months. I did the full 36 rounds. It was probably like 5 or 6 hours a day, every day. And sometimes it was 8 hours because the machines would break because they were brand new. So there would be often technical difficulties. So that was another thing. So radiation kind of, I'm glad it happened. It kind of added light to my situation because I was starting to feel a little bit better physically. Like my hair was starting to grow back like a little bit more. I was starting to feel a little bit more like myself, or at least like look like myself, which felt nice. And I'm laying on this bed where, the cancer is predominantly like on my chest. So I have to lay like on a bed naked with my hands up over my head. And, my two radiation techs are guys my age. So it's just funny that like those are the things that you don't really think of that like do affect a cancer journey. Like, it's like I'm getting treated, but I'm like, hey, they're like talking about raves, and I'm just sitting there like they're like tattooing my chest to align the machine to scan the right area, and it's just it was but it kind of added humor to it for me. No evidence of disease in March. That was good news. And I was just working on enjoying that news for 3 months because at this point I'm getting checked every 3. So that brings us to June yeah, June, I go in for my 3 month scan and they find a small nodule on the bottom left lung. And at the time, they were not 100% certain it was cancer. So that, but they knew to take it out anyway. So I had the VATS procedure where they just kind of go in there with like a scope and it's like a suction and an incision. It's a small incision, kind of like through the back. Um, and again, nothing compared to the major surgery that I had. And they take it out real quick. And then I remember just, being in the recovery room and my surgeon's like the first one I see when I open my eyes. And I love my surgeon. He's wonderful. And like, he tells me, and he's like, hey, and he lets me know, it was cancer. And like that, I broke down. I remember I had a cotton mouth just from the surgery, from the anesthesia. And I just, like, waking up and then hearing that from him it was harder to hear that than it was to get diagnosed the first time. A year goes by and I'm good, and I'm like, okay, I can like live my life. My hair's starting to grow back. I'm starting to do more things. I'm able to travel a little bit more. And it felt like I was finally like getting my life back. And so I'm like, all right, I can go back to school, finish my degree like I wanted to do. So I enroll myself in school. I move in with my partner at the time, and like things are starting to happen. And a week a week before classes start, I'm due for my next scans. And this is probably a year and it was close to 2 years. It was close to 2 years since the surgery. And I go and get my scans. I'm obviously feeling great. And I go in there and they share that there are two new small tumors, one in each lung. And it was like, okay. And it was more of like, because I have to meet three doctors every time I go. Like they all have to check my scan. So, the one doctor was like, everything looks good. I think like we might be concerned about this one, but this should be fine. And then, I meet with the other doctor and they were like, no, it's like, it's back. It's back. You have it here and you have it here. And, we got to treat it. And that didn't that wasn't as bad as the second time I heard it came back, because I think I knew, like, at that point that I'm like, okay, this is my life. This is what my life is now. And it not in like a depressing way. It was just like I needed to continue to tell myself that this is what my life is now. And this is what it's going to be, and this is what I have to deal with, and whatever, I'm alive and I still get to experience great things. So we right away, find a treatment plan. And I was very scared that I was going to have to do chemo again. And thankfully, I did not. So we did the same surgical procedure, the VATS procedure, with the one on the right lung, because I didn't have a lot of radiation to that area. But then where the other one was located, there was a little bit too much tissue damage where it would have interfered with the surgery. So they chose to do cyberknife radiation treatment. And I believe they did 8 rounds of that, which is just like a very high radiation amount, just targeted to a specific area. Since then, it's been almost, what is that, almost 8 years, I think. And that's been the last. So after those two occurrences, I've been stable and good and no evidence of anything for quite some time. What is that?
Yes.
What is it?
Boo boo.
That's my boo boo?
Yeah.
I go every 6 months now. So, of course, it was every 3 months for a very long time. It was probably every 3 months for 4 or 5 years, which I had no problem doing. I told my doctors, I was like, I would see you guys every month if I could. Like, I want to know. I know now that I know how often sarcoma can just come back after however many years. I have no problem seeing my doctors often. But after them not finding anything, we moved to 6 months, and that's where we are now. I've also always been a person to try to find like a silver lining and make light of any situation. So if it is at all available to that person to like laugh at least once a day, I would say that is probably one of the best forms of medicine. Um, Laughing kind of just brings life to us. And when you're dealing with cancer, your life's kind of just taken from you for months. It seems you don't feel like yourself. You don't look like yourself. You're sick. You're all these negative things. But if you can laugh, if you can find something that can make you laugh at least once a day, that will give you that internal motivation to hold on to hope. Because you're like, I'm still able to laugh despite all of this. There's still a chance, you know? And I also just like, I've definitely softened and gotten a lot more vulnerable and sensitive since cancer, but like overall, humor is like the best medicine. I truly believe it. So it's like, we sometimes do have to laugh at our misfortunes. And that's also where, like, you know, a cancer friend comes in, like someone that's lived with it. Like, you're able to talk to them on a different level and you're venting, but it's like you're connecting because you're laughing about your misfortunes. And it's nice because you feel heard, you feel seen, they understand. And it's just nice. It's just nice to have that connection.